All right, we're back with more college football coverage, and to get straight into it, we had TCU taking on Arizona State on Friday. Now, it was looking very good for TCU to start out this game as they jumped out to essentially a 17 nothing lead rather at around the midway point of the second quarter. Like, their entire offense is in that much of a rhythm. I mean, the Hoover connection to Dwyer over the course of this entire season has been good enough. So when he was able to hit him for multiple times, including a key third down conversion on their first touchdown score, it really wouldn't be all that surprising. Like, it was just a routine pass between those two, to be honest with you. And as they got further and further into that drive, one of their running backs in Trent Battle just took multiple bodies with him. I don't know what the hell the Arizona State defense is doing in that sequence. He was just continuing to push forward as different bodies were just bouncing off of him because they either tried to tackle him way too low or just didn't seem to put enough effort in at that time. That was really weird to see. And they would just keep it going. Joseph Manjack IV would be a name that was continuously called throughout the night, and especially during this time. Now, he is a fifth-year senior. So, honestly, you would expect him to have that kind of impact as a slot guy. But it's truly there for him. I mean, the build is absolutely crazy. He doesn't wear any sleeves. He doesn't wear any gloves whatsoever. He just goes out there, bare hands, reeling in some of the toughest passes one could even think of catching from a quarterback. And as the broadcasters continue to point out, man, if you're going to continuously do that, you have some strong fucking hands, bro. There's no doubt about it whatsoever. They also, again, just continued to impose their will through the air and got completely physical against this Arizona State defense that seemingly wasn't prepared enough for that. Like, this second down conversion should have never happened because they got backed up 18 whole yards due to a penalty and a TFL, but they got that all back and then some, as Hoover was just able to volley it over multiple guys' heads for one of their tight ends and Rodgers. And then after the catch, he's again just continuing to take people with him as they're trying to tackle him. It took damn near the whole team to stop him. And even then, the play had to be blown dead after he picked up 39 yards in that situation. On the next play, they literally allow a 7-yard rushing touchdown. And then, to make things even worse, they allow them to drive down the field for a field goal. Arizona State is very lucky that their defense held them in check there, because I'm not going to lie to you, their offense came out flat. You know, Levitt had a few passes. Obviously, he's going to have some good scrambles for you. But outside of that, nothing was consistent enough for them. Their running backs were getting swallowed up by a pretty heavy TCU defensive line. And they, again, pointed that out ad nauseum throughout the broadcast. But they also had chances to make really good plays in coverage. I think there was a situation where Clark, a person who literally is top 5 all time in that college in interceptions, dropped one. So it could have been much, much worse than that. But Arizona State, one thing about them, they're going to consistently fight back. And it wouldn't take them much time to respond, even though it obviously took a decent amount of time to get accustomed to things. Because when you have Jordan Tyson on your team, there is honestly little you have to worry about. I mean, when I say that Levitt threw the cleanest go ball to him, I mean it. Tyson beat his man off press almost immediately. All the space in the world to run under the ball, and he went out and grabbed it to get a 57-yard touchdown on the board for the squad to trim down the lead a little bit. And then on their next possession, again, very quickly, I might add, Sam Levitt just showed how elite he can truly be as a prospect when he does start to settle into these games. because this fucking 24-yard scramble was insane. This man was juking out people, spun off a fucking tackle, and then gained a few extra yards to complete the 24-yard run. Then managed to power into the end zone from 8 yards out for a touchdown. All of a sudden, it's a 3-point ball game before the end of the half. And with them forcing TCU to punt, they had a chance to take the lead or tie the ball game up. But unfortunately, a fumble would occur. So that score would stand entering into the third quarter, where again, it just continued to go favorably for Arizona State, as they would, although Hoover was able to drive down with Manjack fourth, yet again picking up a 32-yard gain here. Wilson would make a really good play on the ball. They were trying to get it over to Dwyer in this situation, but what ended up happening was that he saw the ball late. Now, initially I was thinking, okay, like that was an ill-timed throw from Hoover. You gotta throw that way quicker, but as you just slow the play down further and further, Dwyer isn't even focused on getting the ball. He's still engaged with the corner, never turns his head around, and by the time he tries to make a play on it, he's too late. It gets tipped up, and Wilson just dives in from absolutely nowhere to make the damn play. It's pretty fucking wild stuff. But with that being said, Arizona State still had to drive down the field and respond. They would do just that. It would take a 44-yard gain for them to get deep inside TCU's red zone. But the goal line stand would hold for TCU as they would force Gomez Juarez into a field goal. Keep him in mind as well, because for him to come off of having the game winner last week against Baylor, he struggled from deeper territory in this one. And a few earlier drives saw him miss kicks as well that might have flipped it around for Arizona State even then. But that's besides the point. TCU would hit their stride again as Manjack the fourth yet again picked up another deep first down for them to get them even closer to the goal line. And all it took was a Josh Hoover quarterback scramble to give TCU the ball back heading into the fourth quarter. And it was certainly going to be an interesting one. One thing about Kenny Dillingham that you have to understand is that he's going to consistently be aggressive whenever he sees fit. So for him to go for it on 4th and goal made sense, but the play is set up horribly. And as they tried to get it over to Mateer, the pass ended up being incomplete. It was smart on that front though, because again, in that case, you either take the lead or you pin them back deep. And with Arizona State's defense, after giving up 17 unanswered points, starting to pick things up and forcing another 3-and-out here, that's a decision you could live with. But yet again, when you're counting on your kicker to make a field goal, and you can't even get him to get one from 43 yards out, you're in a bit of a pickle. Like the fact that Arizona State, again, you're trusting your defense. They're getting you the stop that you would need in this situation. And you don't even make good on that at all. You don't get any points out of the situation. And you give TCU the ball back, it could have been very dangerous. But again, credit to this Arizona State defense for hanging in there. I mean, Elliott made plays, man. Smith made plays, and then Dorba would become very important later. But as for now, he would get a nice third down sack on Hoover to push them further back. And once more, give their offense a chance to do something, anything. They would get that almost immediately. I mean, it started off nicely for Raleigh Brown, in accounting for 50 yards in the first 3 plays by himself, including a 35-yard run. And while it had taken him a while to warm up, of course, he was definitely used as an all-around back in this game. Might not considered to be an all-around guy, but with his speed alone, as long as they were able to get him out in space, they found a ton of success in this game. Yet, even with Brown doing that, they couldn't rely on him to run it in on the goal line situation. They would get pushed back a little bit and then just call a very weird play on third down. The game was winding down. This was probably their last chance to do something. So you know who they were going to in this situation. But even though it was incomplete on third down, they weren't going to stop Jordan Tyson in the clutch. Gets the touchdown from 4 yards out to tie the ball game. And then the best defensive outcome could have happened. Not only do you have Dorba crashing in for a sack and forcing the sack fumble as well, but they get it back in very convenient territory for their offense to potentially close out this game. Truly a momentum shifter. And though you'd probably want to see the offense stay on the field a lot longer than 28 seconds, at the end of the day, TCU did still have timeouts. They used them perfectly, tried to manage the situation as best as they could, but Gomez Suarez, within relatively good range, would make the field goal, give them back the lead, and it could have potentially been a game winner. But it would come down to the defense holding yet again, and they would do exactly that. I mean, I don't know what Hoover was thinking on this play, because if you look at it, like, Hughes is watching his every movement. He's watching his every tell. He's looking him dead in his eyes. And yet Hoover decides to just throw it in that area of the field, essentially to his right, anyways. And Hughes worked it perfectly. As anticlimactic as that might have been for, I guess, TCU, knowing that they had such a tremendous start to the game, it would be Arizona State that I guess stole one from them, 27-24 on Friday night. In this one, Sam Levitt completed 69.2% of his passes for 291 yards and 2 passing touchdowns. He also had 62 rushing yards on the ground and a touchdown run. Again, he can be an elite quarterback when he settles in. But you're only going to learn more about Sam Levitt once he gets uncomfortable. Can he, this year, having more experience under his belt, rise in those cases and play far above the standard that he set last season in similar spots? They're going to want to see that progression from him as he gets more and more experience in college football. And again, time and again, he has shown that, like drive like they had against Baylor last week, and you could even argue the touchdown tying drive as well. Like, there are glimpses of it. But he's always had a few setbacks every now and then. So you have to caution that. This was a great performance by him, one of the better ones of this young college football season for him. As for Raleigh Brown, because they had a different Brown come in as well that didn't do so high. But Raleigh Brown had 30 total touches for 184 yards. It might be considered a little bit of a crime that he didn't get a single touchdown from scrimmage at all, but at the very least, he did his job. I guess they didn't have Udo in this game. Maybe he was hurt. So I guess they were going to give him a higher workload. He was up to the task, and the plays did what they needed to do. That's a large reason why they were able to get the advantage in this game, especially when you look at what TCU did on the ground as a team by comparison. Jordan Tyson would have 8 receptions for 126 yards and 2 touchdowns. Again, as the broadcast team put it perfectly, because, guys like Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith exist in the college football space right now, but Jordan Tyson is legitimately, I can agree with this, the best draft-eligible wide receiver in the nation right now. The best. That's not a stretch to say. I mean, he's putting it all out there on tape for you to see. So this really shouldn't come as a surprise. to say the least. And again, for Gomez Suarez to make just 50% of his field goals in this game, yet still come out with the dub, knowing that, they still have enough faith in you to trust you in those spots, has got to be the most gratifying feeling for a kicker in any capacity. As for TCU's numbers here, Josh Hoover, again, looked relatively fine to start out the game, but I don't know what the hell happened. Just completely fell off a cliff. 62.5% completion from the field for 242 yards and 2 interceptions with a rushing touchdown. It was very weird. He also hit the turf on multiple occasions. He got sacked 6 times and lost 38 yards by himself. That didn't really make things better for their rushing game, which had done so well, honestly, against North Carolina to open up the season. And maybe that's more of a reflection on how bad that team has been to start off the year. But nevertheless, for them to go from that to open up the year and have, consistent production in that front in the weeks to follow, to just 12 rushing yards as a team and only a half yard a carry, even if you did get 3 touchdowns on the ground, that's fucking porous. As for the receivers, Joseph Manjack IV had 6 receptions for 83 yards. Rogers, their tight end, had 4 receptions for 60 yards, and Jordan Dwyer had 3 receptions for 42. Tough loss for TCU, but it looks as though it might not have done that much damage to them when you really think about it. I guess they did fall out of the top 25. Fair enough. That makes sense. They were 24th coming into the game, on the fringe as it was. But, they're probably not going to be that far removed, I wouldn't imagine. As long as they string together a few more solid wins, they can probably re-enter it, I guess. All right. I had plans to watch a good portion of the next few games. That was not how things ended up working out, but still going to do as best as I can to cover them all. I was really looking forward to watching the Notre Dame, 22nd ranked Notre Dame, and Arkansas game live. Like I said, both of these teams were coming into this with a sense of desperation. Okay, you are Notre Dame in this situation, and even with them winning this game, to spoil it, although you kind of have an idea of what happened at this point. Even if you did win this game before you came into it, right? The chances of you jumping up in the top 25, like completely vaulting all the way up into highly ranked territory, I don't know if that would have happened. And you still are in a spot where it's like you have to win out. You have to. You don't have a choice. Extremely low playoff odds coming into the game. You had no other choice but to run the table. And this Arkansas team was in a similar spot. You are coming off, if you are Arkansas, back-to-back ball games where untimely fumbles cost you a chance at legitimately winning the game, and where you lost these games by a combined touchdown. You're at home in what is known as a fairly hostile environment in Arkansas. Maybe not compared to some of the other SEC schools, but they do all right down there when it comes to supporting their team. You're going to have that fan base behind your back. You just needed to make sure that you were playing your A game. By the end of this game, that A game was not even close to what Arkansas put out on display. And if anything, they allowed Notre Dame to do exactly that. I'll talk about Notre Dame before getting into Arkansas, though, because they had a lot that happened after this game. But Notre Dame would essentially win this 56-13. So without watching this live, even though I thought this was going to be a pretty damn good, gritty ball game. They got their asses kicked. And it's crazy. What a fucking win for a school that consistently does not want to be a part of any conference. You can do this to a pretty damn solid SEC team. And again, the SEC is so deep. I don't get that comment from Lashley earlier in like the preseason, by the way, saying that the ACC had a deeper conference. Oh, fuck no. Oh, no. SEC is tremendously deep. Even if Arkansas has been struggling like this to start out the season, they are still a damn good SEC team. And in any other conference, they'd probably be one of the better teams in that respective conference. It's just that the SEC is so fucking stacked and they beat up on each other all the fucking time that you rarely get to see a team like Arkansas in this day shine through and make a deep run. That's how it goes. They signed up for it. But Notre Dame just proved to you that they don't even need to be in any conference to whip ass. All right? This was the Jeremiah Love show. Man, I think is the first Notre Dame running back in history to have 2 rushing touchdowns and 2 receiving touchdowns. Had a total of, I think, 19 total touches for 127 total yards by himself. Jarian Price also kept that up as well, as he had a 35-yard touchdown catch to go along with 86 rushing yards and a score on 13 carries as well. It was also a very sound game for CJ Carr. Probably one of the best performances he could have had. And probably the best of this season. He deserves it. You know, he hadn't been doing too bad at all in any of the games, any of the 4 games that he's played to this point. So he deserved to go out and have himself a bit of a spectacle like this. Like 354 yards on 73.3% completion and 4 touchdowns with absolutely no picks. No turnovers whatsoever for him. Damn near flawless. And everybody ate. I mean, you had 8 different receivers log at least a catch here, and all of them had over 32 yards or more at least. This Jeffrey person got a 37-yard catch. Raritan got 43 yards on 2 catches. Pauling, the 5th-year senior who transferred from Wisconsin to Notre Dame in the offseason, managed to get 3 catches for 53 yards and a touchdown in this game as well. While Malachi Fields would get 3 receptions and 72 yards on the day. Faison, also one of their more reliable guys, and just an all-around athlete in general, would lead the team with 7 receptions and 89 yards. No score for him, but that's okay. Now onto Arkansas, because it's like there's no way, right? You wouldn't know, especially if you watched the game live, looking at how both teams played, you wouldn't know that Taylor Green is the more experienced quarterback and that CJ Carr is just a redshirt freshman doing this. Now, Taylor Green coming into this game had been doing exceptionally well, don't get me wrong. Literally came into it being responsible for the 2nd most total touchdowns amongst players in the FBS with 14. So he'd been doing pretty solid to start off the year. And this was a bad time to have a stinker against a good Notre Dame team. A very bad time. And again, it's just so wild to think that even with him having a few like rough situations in the past couple games, they still were competing. They still had a shot because of what Green was doing. And now is the time where he just comes out with 53.1% completion, 207 yards, and an interception. It's very, very odd. That shift is just so sudden. It's like, damn. Like, if Green wasn't performing like this, who knows what would have happened in this Notre Dame game. Like, I'm sure they would have stood a much better chance. And again, at least, even though you don't want to continue to lose off of fucking game-ending fumbles, you at least were in the fight, and you follow that up and reward your fan base for, I don't know, just the general support. I'm not going to say patience here, but you reward them with this performance as a team. Even if Taylor Green added 81 rushing yards on the ground, to what avail? And honestly, they did fine as a rushing unit with 160 yards as a team, but they still got outgained, and a lot of that could be chalked up to garbage time at this point. Their receivers were also okay at most. I mean, they say that Blake had 6 receptions for 73 yards, and also Sharp had 5 receptions for 42 yards, but outside of that, not much else was happening consistently enough to invoke fear in this Notre Dame defense. And then for Arkansas, oh my goodness, I mean, bro, it speaks for itself when they can beat you by 43 points like that. Now, again, their defense has not been good all season long, especially considering how you gave up multiple big-time touchdown runs to the duo of Memphis running backs last week and allowed them both to run for over 100 yards, while Memphis torched you on that front. And that was Memphis. You knew the game plan was to stop the pair of Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price, because once those guys settle into doing what it is that they do, the Notre Dame team can be very dangerous. They themselves had been trying to find their run game a little bit, but not clearly enough to come out on the winning end consistently. And I guess they picked matters up against Purdue, but this was a game right here where they might have reasserted themselves as a rushing unit. And you got to live with that for the rest of the season. That's a damn shame. Also, again, the fact that you're letting a redshirt freshman in Carr perform like that has got to be some kind of fucking embarrassing, to say the least, dude. I mean, come on. That is fucking ridiculous. And to make matters even worse for Arkansas, boy. So, I mean, you don't have a choice, right? When you suffer a loss like that after repeatedly going through the ringer as a Razorbacks team, somebody's getting fired. I don't care who it is, but the coaching staff is not going to remain the exact same as it was coming into the game. That's fair. So, naturally, yesterday, I should say, Arkansas fired their but head coach in Sam Pittman, and had to pay him $9.5 million because he was 2 games above 500 in his 56-game tenure at the school. I find that to be utter bullshit. You're going to lead them on that kind of mediocrity and still expect damn near $10 million from them? Like, come on, man. Are you fucking serious? That's a shit show. But again, a change had to be made. Fair, because at that point, like, it's clear that the players have lost some kind of faith. It's clear that it's just not working right now. And understandably, if he was a more accomplished head coach, fine. They probably let this pass. I mean, with a 29-27 record, I'd have to assume that they probably at the most made 1 or 2 bowl games and then just haven't done shit in any of the other seasons that he's been there. That is not a good enough resume to sustain, especially when you're trying to go up against some of the toughest competition in college football that there is, and you're consistently underwhelming. They had to move on from that shit. But what an interesting decision they would make for the short term. Because they would elevate none other than Bobby Petrino, their current offensive coordinator, as their interim head coach. Yeah, that Bobby Petrino. Now, I get it. You don't have that much of a choice. You don't. Like, you've got to elevate somebody off the coordinator position. And usually they would look towards a person that they consider ripe for the job. That would always tend to be one of the coordinators. You know, you might get a positions coach. But you're going to look from within in those situations all the time until you find somebody else on the outside that you may like. That makes sense. From that perspective, I get them wanting to trust Bobby Petrino for the short term in this situation. But here's the fucking thing. Okay? Because if you know anything about Bobby Petrino, you know that this nigga cannot be trusted. Just flat out. I mean, this is the same person that skipped town on Louisville after he had a successful season there to go to the Falcons. Alright? Then he spent time there throwing everybody he could think of under the fucking bus and then jumped ship from them again. He was also previously Arkansas's head coach from like the late 2000s to the early 2010s. And the main reason why that tenure with Arkansas ended before they moved on to somebody else was because this nigga was covering up a fucking affair on the side. The shit leaked out and he got canned. So the same Bobby Petrino that was doing all this suspicious stuff on the side and who has constantly thrown people under the bus when he served as a head coaching figure for multiple teams across the NFL and college football, with him obviously being more successful in college football. That is his background, and you're trusting that even for the short term. I know he has history with the school, but y'all have got to be so swift in making a true head coaching hire very soon. This could be a trial run for Petrino to redeem himself if they could go on some kind of a tear to close out the season. I will say that. I wouldn't rule him out. But, like, there's no fucking shot that you give this man the job back just for him to potentially tear all of your momentum away again like he did around 13 years ago to this point. Like, how fucking stupid can you be? I don't know. We'll see. But man, I don't really know. I don't know how well that's gonna go. And again, schedule for Arkansas, again with them facing off against SEC competition, isn't gonna be forgiving at all. So I don't know. There's a very tough task here in front of him. But if he handles it well, maybe he asserts himself into that conversation. I just wouldn't trust it, and you probably shouldn't. That's the thing here. All right. I did catch bits and pieces of this game between number 4 LSU and number 13 Ole Miss. Trinidad Chambliss would have a very slow start to this game, but it would beat LSU, who took the lead. Now, granted, this one was probably the quickest drive they could have had. It did help that they managed to get a 50-yard gain to start it out. And Nick Anderson also would get in a good fucking catch on the sideline for a 7-yard touchdown to get them out and start it off right. Ole Miss wanted to play the strategy of grinding it out. I mean, this damn drive right here, the fact that you go 7 minutes and 30 seconds down the field for 83 yards on 18 plays and you still only come out of it with a field goal has got to be disappointing. But it was effective enough. That essentially would cap off the first quarter right then and right there. But it wasn't just one of these two teams' seasons on the line. Lane Kiffin has been going through a lot of stuff in the last week. They had an E60 report out on him, detailing a lot of his past coaching experiences and just general life. And then I see something that mentioned that his damn daughter is dating one of the Weeks brothers at the linebacker position on the fucking LSU team. So you have Kiffin coming into this game double motivated to game plan against this damn school so he can get the win. I mean, that is just wild. Like, again, I'm not going to get into that. You know, like, they're both grown. They can do what they please. But damn, like, that is legitimately just fucking wild. You know Kiffin had to take that somewhat personally. And that kind of sentiment would bleed down to his defense. Because Nussmeier had been okay to start off this season. But as I say all the time, if you can force him into one mistake, just one mistake, you give yourself pretty good chance to completely fuck up LSU's momentum. And they did that. I mean, LSU was driving on this possession, and then Williams gets a nice lurk on Nussmeier to get them the ball back. But it remained relatively slow for a while. I mean, you know, both teams were just being suffocated by each defense. And then at the very moment that Ole Miss managed to break out for a 70-yard drive, you had one of their returning wide receivers from last season in Lee get near the fucking goal line. And not only did their star safety in A.J. Halsey force the fumble, but none other than our boy Weeks would get the fucking fumble recovered to give LSU the ball back on the spot. But of course their offense would still be stagnant. They didn't move a single inch. And they would replicate that with another short drive that totaled literally the same amount of yardage, the same amount of plays, and hey, Lacey, their running back, managed to get the touchdown to go to give Ole Miss a 10-7 lead. Okay, Kawan Lacey. Just making sure on the name because I do not want to get that mixed up for obvious reasons, especially with the fact that they are facing LSU here. I also wonder if those two are related in some way, but I would have to look at that in my own time, I suppose. Ole Miss would keep it going, though. They keep the offense on their toes and then manage to get right back down the field for yet another touchdown score, as this time Lee would redeem himself by starting it off with a 30-yard catch and then capping it off with a touchdown catch of 2 yards. All of a sudden, Ole Miss would have a 17-7 lead entering into the third quarter. And it, again, neither offense was able to do much of anything, but LSU at the very least squeezed out 2 field goal drives to shorten up the lead. Following in between that, LSU's defense forcing Chambliss into a mistake of his own and cutting it down to 4 before the start of the fourth quarter. This would have been a prime point for LSU's defense to step up, and they absolutely failed to do so. I mean, they just allowed them to completely churn their way down the field. And it would be their other running back in Diggs to punch it in from 6 yards out to give them an 11-point lead. Nussmeier, for all his faults, would have a lot to prove on this drive. You learn a lot about him if he was able to do what he needed to do here. And it was definitely a bit of a doozy. It took so much. Like, repeatedly, they got themselves in 3rd and 4th down situations. But, Nussmeier made some sound reads here. Parker would get himself a 10-yard gain. Anderson would pick up 21 yards to get in plus territory. And then they would get stopped just enough to get right into a crucial 4th down. Game on the line, trajectory of the season on the line, and Parker would be tackled just short, but he put in a lot of extra effort on this play, truly showing how much he wanted this game right here. And he would pick up the 1st down, just barely. All right? They get into their 4-down routine yet again. They get stopped short, and it looks dangerous for them when their offensive lineman gets a false start penalty. Yet, Parker, yet again, looking his way, and he picks up another 1st down on a 4th and 5 here. Then it would be on the back of Barry, one of their other running backs, to get gains of 9, and then a 6-yard touchdown run. They would try to go for 2, and I do understand that. You want to make sure that you could get the ball back and force them to obviously be stopped, get the ball back yourself, and maybe tie up the ball game to go to overtime, touchdown to win, but you wouldn't be forced to in this situation. They would miss the PAT, and then again, their defense needed to make a stop here, but instead, they allow Ole Miss to take away the rest of the game. As Chambliss, Lacey, and even Wright, with this 4th and 3 conversion, would cap off the game with a final score of 24-19. I know Brian Kelly is probably pissed off right now, but I don't know. If you're going to consistently have those slow lapses on offense, and your defense can't make stops when it counts, I don't know what you expected. Also, man, LSU didn't do shit on the ground, which is going to help a quarterback like Nussmeier. The fact that you only rushed it for 21 times and 59 yards in this game. Like, I'm sure that their running backs are much better than this. That could be a testament to Ole Miss's front 7. There's also no damn way that happens. So it was going to be rougher for Nussmeier to just stand up and be a pocket passer. It was going to be tougher for him to sell play action throws if you're not making yourself that kind of threat on the ground. He completed 61.8% of his passes for 197 yards and a touchdown with an interception. For receivers, Barry and Brown had 5 receptions for 40 yards, and Thomas would have 3 receptions for 63 yards as well. As for Ole Miss, Chambliss, again, a decent outing by comparison to how he started his tenure at Ole Miss to this point. But 314 yards on 59% completion ain't bad. Only a passing touchdown and an interception, though. He did also have 71 yards on the ground by himself. Again, that's damn crazy. Like, it's going to be tough for that true freshman to really take the job back now if Chambliss, even in his worst output, can still eke out a quality win like this against a top 5 opponent. Kawan Lacey had 87 rushing yards to go along with 21 yards out of the backfield and a touchdown run. And for receivers, Lee had 4 receptions for 70 yards and the aforementioned touchdown. Wright would have 4 receptions for 66 yards. And Alexander would have 3 receptions for 64 yards. moving on briefly to number 9 Texas A&M versus Auburn. Mostly, Le'Veon Moss is just an absolute fucking beast, man. I mean, is there, like, we knew this coming into the game, but on a day where not much else worked for a Texas A&M offense that usually is going to do what they can to spread the rock around, he was the X factor for them in this game. And when you can consistently rely on him to just get you in field goal range on the back of his legs alone, like, he's truly a tremendous threat. I don't know if he's eligible for this draft class or not, but he's got to be highly scouted at this point in time. It's just continuing to be solidified on a week-to-week basis. You know, it was tough for Marcel Reed out there to really diagnose Auburn's defense, who is, again, still a pretty good unit in their own right. But again, at times, they were still able to make the right plays to their guys in Concepcion and also Craver at multiple points to get them within field goal range. Now, it could have been a lot worse of a score. It didn't help that they went back-to-back possessions at the end of the first half, which I did see, and then to start off the third quarter with missed field goals. But outside of all that, again, their offense was relatively held in check, and it didn't help that Reed also threw an interception in Auburn territory at this point as well, which could have really turned things around for Auburn. And I mean, it did when you look at the fact that Jackson Arnold was literally able to rush in for a touchdown on the very next drive and play. Still, the Aggies would hold with a 16-10 victory. And this is where the issue with Auburn kicks in. It was bad enough that they gave up 10 sacks, a school record, to Oklahoma last week. And yet it didn't seem to get any better for their offense when it comes to protecting Jackson Arnold, and also Jackson Arnold being able to make quick reads at the right time as well. In this particular game, did they learn anything? The only slight improvement here was that you gave up 5 sacks instead of 10. Yet, ironically enough, on the final possession of the game, it ended with Jackson Arnold being sacked and hitting the fucking dirt again. Just like it ended up being the case last week. It's embarrassing. And Jackson Arnold isn't completely innocent in this, because, like, even without watching the full game, there's no guarantee that every single time Texas A&M was just on his ass, pressuring him and getting the perfect read on him. I'm sure there were some moments in this game where he had a good, clean pocket to operate in. And yet this man, at a certain point in time, I think before the final drive even, went fucking 16 of 30 from the field for 94 yards. The final stats for him don't even look that much better. And especially when you pair that up with the eye test if you watch this full game live. I mean, 54.5% completion, 125 yards, and get this, 3.8 yards per pass attempt. What? Come on, man. You're telling me that you could not get any of your receivers involved like that? In what world, because I'm looking at it here, in what world should Cam Coleman be held to just 4 catches for 18 yards? What the fuck was the game plan coming into this? I'm so confused. Genuinely. It's like there's just no way. Now, like that's great work for Texas A&M, yeah. It's their lowest points in a win since 2017. But you allowed them to play an uncharacteristically good defensive game after you just went up against a better Notre Dame defense a couple weeks back and upset them by scoring 41 points yourself. Or, well, them allowing 40 in this situation. There's just no way that you allowed them to turn around and hold you to just a single touchdown. And then to have that average depth of your passing attempts be that low. At what point were the fucking screen plays and all these short passes going to stop? Because it was clear that they were just blowing them up at that point. If you're not even accurate in doing that. Like, that is just embarrassing to me. In Auburn, they started off the season well, but dropping 2 straight in the way that they've done it is horrible. And still, even with all that being said, their run game is just not helping. Like, where is it? You open up the season getting a good one against Baylor. A great one against Baylor, and obviously Arnold still led the way there. Maybe this is the issue, I guess. You're becoming too Jackson Arnold reliant in the rushing attack. And if he's not on, who is? I mean, he by himself accounted for 15 rushes in just 11 yards. Think about that shit. The team as a whole was not great on the ground, with just 52 rushing yards on 2.2 yards per carry. This is an offense in which you would need to establish the run in some fashion for Jackson Arnold to be performing well. He's at his best when that element of the game is a threat that is posed to other teams. And when you limit that, he's not going to give you elite caliber production. So maybe in this sense it shouldn't come as a surprise, but like damn, to go out like that is just fucking wild. Meanwhile, you had Moss by himself get 139 yards on the ground in a touchdown. Like what? Come on, man. Gotta get that shit together. Straight up. All right. Moving on to number 17 Alabama versus number 5 Georgia. And again, definitely a good one to wait on. The main key for Georgia in this game was to limit Ryan Williams. We all know how great his game was against them last year. And ironically enough, this game on Saturday took place essentially just a year to the day of said game. You had to imagine that Alabama, in an optimal situation, would try to make him a core player, a core focus of their offense in this game. You couldn't allow that again. Anybody else but Ryan Williams. Also, quarterback matchup would be a little bit interesting on both sides as well. Both of these teams have a lot of solid pieces around them. It's not just Ryan Williams for Alabama. You had Jam Miller come back, for example. Jeremy Bernard's also been a complementary threat alongside Ryan Williams for the longest time now. Isaiah Horton is one of their other players. And then their defense is pretty sound as well. Got some good seniors. A little bit of youth on that side as well, in terms of, I guess, class. Georgia as well always will field a very good defense, and their offensive weapons are pretty much solidified. I mean, I'm shocked that Delp is still there. I'm shocked that Bell is still there. And then they got a boatload of fucking running backs that they just use at will, which is obviously going to be the strength of their game. But the game was essentially going to come down to who would step up between Gunner Stockton or Ty Simpson. Both of them in high-stakes games have proven, at least prior to this, with what they've put out on tape, that they cannot answer the call. You know, we saw Ty Simpson earlier in the season against Florida State. We've seen Gunner Stockton in the CFP. And yeah, even though he did win that SEC championship game, was not really all because of him. Struggled in the Notre Dame game. Of course, the team as a whole was just depleted after Carson Beck went down, naturally. And I mean, I guess he did play well against Tennessee, but you'd want to test that again. You don't want them to make this all about the run. You want to put the game in Gunner Stockton's hands and make him prove to you that he can go out there and win you a football game. Same with Georgia's defense. Continue to keep the pressure on Ty Simpson, speed up his clock, and ensure that their other weapons, like a Ryan Williams, for example, don't dictate the game and that he is the driver of this particular offense. Force him to make a mistake. Anything you can do to get in his head, you do it. Simple as that. Man, it fared out a lot better for Alabama to start out. I mean, they belted to a 14-0 lead. Now, interestingly enough, they did have a shot early in the game, on the first drive, in fact, to Ryan Williams, and he dropped it. They mentioned as well with a graphic later on that he has the most drops in the SEC, or maybe the entire nation, since last year, with 12, at least entering this game, and it got worse there. You know, it was a pretty good money ball. Like, the post route was ran perfectly. He had his man beat. It was a little bit of a tighter window throw, but Ty Simpson got enough air on it. Lobbed over both of their heads. Williams was gone, and it just goes right through his hands. That kind of stuff can't happen, but again, at the same time, it's probably something that he can learn from. This is a person that is only 18 years old and a sophomore. So even with him doing what he did as a freshman last year, there's still room for him to get even better in these next few years. But, you know, that kind of problem can get out of hand. So, you know, you want to try to get a hold on that as soon as possible. But no problem. You would have Jeremy Bernard become a main contributor in this offense as he would get the touchdown here on the first drive. And they took damn near half of the first quarter off with that alone. Then their defense managed to get a 3-and-out on Georgia Tech almost immediately. And to open up the second quarter, they had yet another long drive. Also, too, to start out this game, they were something like 8 of 8 on their first 8 third down attempts as well. And this drive continued that. I mean, literally, one to Josh Cuevas. They get behind the sticks, no worries. Ryan Williams gets a 7-yard gain for them. They get in this territory again and get a pitch to Jeremy Bernard for an 11-yard run to pick up a first down here. Just keeping it churning. And ironically enough, it would pay off for them. I mean, they got into yet another situation here where Jan Miller would pick up a 7-yard run, and then Isaiah Horton would be the one to get a 6-yard touchdown catch to bring them up to 14-0. Here's the really twisted part about this. By the time, and with minutes to spare in the first quarter, with it nearing to a close, Kalen DeBoer had wasted every single one of his timeouts. And yet their offense was allowed to continue doing what they were doing to that front seven and to that coverage unit by repeatedly making the right play at the right time on third down. Why is that? Like, you're thinking, okay, 1 or 2 third downs, fine. 8 in a row to open up the game, and they were damn accurate throughout the first half on third downs. They didn't really slow down in that regard until we got deeper and deeper into the third quarter and stuff like that. You let them punk you like that. And this was taking place in Georgia too. They're getting as loud as they can for you. And yet something is going wrong at every turn. You're finding people out of position at every turn to the point where you don't come up with a single stop in those situations. And they sustain those long drives. What happened to trying to get off the field and give yourself some energy? You're draining yourself like that. Constantly having to worry about this and not coming through. If Alabama was to keep that going, like, this could have gotten truly bad for Georgia, honestly. And again, they had a little bit of an advantage in making sure that DeBoer used all his timeouts at this point. Surely he wouldn't come to regret using them all that quickly, right? Like, all three of them do make sense when you think about it. He was trying to make sure that delay of game penalties were avoided. But, man, at some point, you got to just let that run through. Like, I know you're trying to assert your will as an offense, but at the same time, man, you got to think about it from the perspective of the long run. Because if you did find yourself in a spot where you needed to clutch out a drive to cap off the second quarter, well, how the fuck are you going to do that and manage that as effectively as you want to without the aid of a timeout? It's possible in college, of course, with stoppage of the clock, but that's just a luxury that you would like to have, and you just completely run through it all. That's fucking wild to me. Georgia started to wake it up a little bit, though, as Young, one of their wide receivers for Georgia, just broke free on a go route. Stockton threw a great ball to him. And all of a sudden, Georgia would get a touchdown on the board themselves. It would have been optimal for them to score on the next drive following the stop that they got here. But their running back decided to fumble. I mean, there honestly was nothing that he could do about it, though. Bray Hubbard is one of the better safeties in that conference, as they so say, with him making the all-conference team, I believe, for defense. And, yo, he got a damn good punch-out on the ball. I can't even lie to you. They get short field position. They're in a great spot to go up by at least 2 touchdowns, and yet they don't. Georgia would be so grateful for that. I mean, they tried to implement the run game, but this third and relatively manageable would be stopped short, as Bernard would get clamped up a little bit. Like, Robinson, the fourth, had tremendous coverage on him in this route right here. You know, he tried to get it over to the back of the end zone, but he got in position to deflect it nicely. And they would take a 10-point lead. Georgia would be more methodical with their next drive, drawing out an 11-play 75-yarder, getting some timely first down gains like this one to Young to start out the drive. And then also their running back in Chauncey Bowens, I believe, would reach a career-high mark in rushing yards on this absolute heater of a run that he got to the left side of the field. He damn near had a touchdown, but he was unfortunately caught. That would allow them to continue to run time off the clock, and Bowens would inevitably get in the touchdown with a few minutes left in the second quarter to make this a 3-point ball game for the Bulldogs. All that hard work was pretty much erased as Alabama, despite not having a timeout, would manage to work their way down the field, burn as much time as they possibly could, and get Ty Simpson in a position to scramble for a free touchdown of his own and reclaim a 10-point lead. That would stand at halftime. And then A lot of chaos would take place in the second half. I'm not going to lie. A lot of chaos. Now I have to constantly flip back and forth between this and the very next game that I'm going to be talking about. But you start off any half with a missed field goal, you know some fuckery is about to go down. And I mean, hey, Georgia compounded on that opportunity nicely. They took it 74 yards straight down the field in just a matter of 6 plays. Got Dylan Bell active in any creative way they could, honestly. That's typical for him. Gave him a damn 43-yard run here, and they just churned closer and closer and closer into the goal line, where McCray, one of their other running backs here, would just muscle his way in for a 1-yard touchdown run. I mean, it was just a defensive stalemate from here on out. Like, Georgia would get the key stop on Simpson to buy themselves another chance. But then both teams would just go 3 and out. Open up the fourth quarter, and, I mean, Georgia was driving a little bit. They got a nice scramble from Stockton under a little bit of improv, and they would take it all the way down to the 8-yard line after a few more runs. You're thinking that you probably would go for it in this situation. And, I mean, to their credit, they did the right thing. You're trying to take a lead here. You don't want to constantly have to settle for field goals. I understand that. But the play set up so unfortunately. Like, for a second there, you have Stockton flip it to Cash Jones. And at first glance, Cash Jones has got all green grass over there because you have a few linemen in the area, a couple players, but there is no safety help on the back end. There isn't even so much as an Alabama player within that radius on that side of the field at all, because they collapsed completely to the left. So the right side was wide open. Cash Jones just has to stay on his feet, keep his balance, and just bust one in for a touchdown. But Overton, one of the major and I guess more recognized defensive tackles for that Alabama defense, made a hell of a fucking play. He reached his fucking arm out and got the bottom of Cash Jones's foot. He was stumbling, and he tripped down in the backfield for a 3-yard loss. Honestly, when looking at the progression of this game, that might have been the most important play, generally. Even with all the highlights that, I'm going through that you probably watched in real time if you saw the game live, that was the most important play of the game. If Overton does not leap out there, use all of his wingspan to trip up Cash Jones, there isn't a soul in his area code, and he is gone for what possibly could have been a go-ahead touchdown. Like, they weren't having it, though. And from there, Alabama would try to burn some clock themselves, but to no avail. Georgia would also get into a little bit of a longer drive, and it's like that had to be the one. If they didn't come away with anything here, it was going to be a wrap on this game. They did try. They did get a few conversions. Zachariah Branch took a while to get involved. I don't know why they kept using him as this kind of gadget player guy. Like, he can literally burn defenses if you give him a chance, and he would get a 22-yard gain here. Right? But they tried to find him again. Ended up being an incomplete pass, and then they lost yards on a run. So they had no choice with 3:25 left to punt the ball. Apparently things got really crazy on this final drive for Alabama. I mean, they would win the game, and they would pick up the conversion anyway, but for some reason, one of the Georgia players had to make it worse, because as they're blowing the play dead, as Ty Simpson is being taken down to the ground, this man takes it upon himself to leap into the fucking pile over everybody and land on top. Like, what impulse could have possibly kicked into your head to make you want to do that shit to somebody? It was a stupid penalty, and it ended up being an unnecessary roughness call. It's like, that's just not something that you needed to do in that moment. Like, they were going to burn clock anyways. It probably would have reached a 2-minute warning regardless. But you gave yourself even less leg room with that stupid ass shit. It's like, come on, man. And, hey, I mean, Todd Simpson would get it out to Jam Liller in space on a 7-yard catch. That would officially do it. And Alabama, despite starting off a little rough, would manage to get the 24-21 win here against a Georgia team that they have very much owned since Kirby Smart has been the head coach there. I think that against just them, compared to all of his other competition, Kirby Smart now exits this game with a 1-8 record against them. And for as good of a coach as he is, if you're consistently finding yourself in those spots against Alabama, even if we might say that they are not the runaway top dogs, if you will, of the SEC, like, they are still a gauntlet for anybody. And you still don't find yourself in a spot to win this game. Despite them not even scoring a point in the second half, you did your job there by keeping them away from those opportunities. And for what? Todd Simpson had 276 passing yards on 63.2% completion in 2 touchdown passes with a touchdown run and 12 rushing yards. Their run game as a team was decent. Not much to write home about. I mean, just 3.3 yards per carry, yeah, but 116 yards. 119 yards as a unit. As for their receivers, Isaiah Horton had 5 receptions for 65 yards and a touchdown. Ryan Williams had 5 receptions for 43 yards as a touchdown. And Jeremy Bernard had 5 receptions for 35 yards and a touchdown to go along with 20 yards on the ground. As for Gunnar Stockton, he had 130 yards and 65% completion with a touchdown pass and 22 rushing yards. Ballens would extend his career high to 119 rushing yards on the ground on 12 carries with a rushing touchdown. And their team as a whole, Georgia, again, they did what they did best, man. 227 yards on the ground and damn near 7 yards a pop. Like, when push came to shove, and especially in short yardage situations, Alabama stood no chance against them for the most part. But, again, that tackle for loss by Overton and the different tackle for loss on that final Georgia drive were, again, great enough. They were extremely clutch, knowing that this was a 3-point ball game. And that kind of made up for some of those big gains. Like, if you're not going to break in those situations, I guess you'll allow it. Young would have 4 receptions for 59 yards and a touchdown, and Zachariah Branch would have 3 receptions for 35 yards on the day to go along with 4 rushing yards. Like, I don't know. Again, it's an expected loss for Georgia, I suppose. Maybe they can bounce back. But for one, again, if you're in their position, you want to get this inconsistency from Gunnar Stockton a little hashed out. I mean, he didn't play the worst in this game, but you definitely like to see him elevate his play in these high-stakes games. Or maybe, again, if he continues to show you this, maybe then he is not built for that moment. And you know what? It is what it is. But my problem here would lie in the fact that they're just misutilizing Zachariah Branch. I mean, again, those small amount of touches And you're not even giving him the space to work with, because you know he's going to be dangerous in space. Credit to Alabama for game planning for that. But at the same time, oh my goodness. Like, you as a coach have to put your players in favorable positions. And you went all out to go get Zachariah Branch, knowing that he could be this sort of dynamic player for you. Now, I can't necessarily complain about you favoring a lot of the running actions that they have over giving Zachariah Branch the ball. That is the identity of their team right now. But at the same time, man, you'd like to see Zachariah Branch get a little bit more involved. And in different ways than they have been. Making him a part of this offense to start out the season. This has clearly not been enough. And then, for the game of games, Oregon versus Penn State. The number 6 ranked team in the nation versus the number 3 ranked team in the nation at the time of the game. What a match it ended up being, too. Like, again, I didn't watch all of the first half, I should say. Again, had to constantly flip in between the action. But Penn State would strike first with a field goal of their own, as you would have Nick Singleton manage to fucking bail out this man, Drew Allar, on a third down before Ryan Barker would eventually kick a 49-yard field goal. For his credit, Barker is honestly a good kicker. So, I mean, I don't know. It's just, like, at least if you are in Penn State's position, you have someone that you can rely upon like that. He should be eligible for the draft. I don't know if he'd get drafted, but we'll see how that goes for him. Nonetheless, for Oregon's offense, I don't know. They came out a little sluggish, which makes sense. I mean, Dante Moore, even though he's one of the top recruits, is also a redshirt freshman at this point, if I'm not mistaken. To have him experience a setting like that for the first time would naturally get to your head. I could guarantee it. Okay, he's a sophomore. All right. Redshirt sophomore then. Yeah. But he was at, I think, UCLA they mentioned. So he's never experienced anything like this before. And even though he's put together a sort of Heisman candidacy, it would naturally look tough within the first few possessions of the game. I wouldn't have expected him to just come out unfazed, completely unfazed and locked in for the game. But hey, I mean, the defense was ready. Drew Allar, even with that bailout, still couldn't do much and would go 3-and-out on the next possession before Oregon would put together a solid drive to cap off the first half, getting themselves on the board at least after a few solid plays. On 4th and 1, for example, of course the Moors had to connect as DeCorian would get in a nice dig route over the middle of the field to pick up 4th and 1 for them. And eventually Sappington, although he missed the first field goal attempt of the game, would manage to get in this one. And that would essentially end off the half, is Penn State, although they had a possession, oh boy, could not do much. I mean, Ugalele, for example, got him in the backfield, Nick Singleton, that is. And while they would pick up a first down anyways, they could not compound on that opportunity and would eventually get themselves into a 4th and 15 situation. You had no choice but to punt at that time. Action would really heat up in the second half, specifically when you look at this drive from Oregon. I mean, yeah, their defense had to set the tone, so naturally they got a good stop on Drew Allar and that offense before getting the ball back. And then, while avoiding a little bit of chaos, they did manage to get 80 yards down the field for a touchdown. You know, it took a little bit. Sadiq would get a 23-yard catch in to pick up third down for them on a pretty good throw outside to from Moore. And then you would also have City get involved yet again to get another first down for them as they were getting in the red zone of the Nittany Lions here. Now, chaos would ensue because Whittington, usually one of their better running backs and just general players, would actually fumble the football, and Penn State would return it. That was looking incredibly tough. A chance to take the lead completely stripped away from you with that loss of possession. Only it was challenged, and under further review, they would say that he was down by contact and that he lost about a yard or so. Now, myself, at that very moment, I flipped back over to the Alabama-Georgia game, thinking that Penn State had the ball back. And I was wondering, when I cut this game back on without the context, I was wondering how the fuck the Ducks scored that quickly. I was like, okay, I had to look back at the tracker, and yeah, they mentioned that, okay, it ended up being overturned. So that lined up completely. On that very next play, though, Moore would shake it off and get in a nice touchdown pass to Hill from 8 yards out to give them a 10-3 lead. That defense for Oregon was heating up, and the routine became much harder for the Nittany Lions to account for. I'm not going to lie to you. The Nick Singleton reception out of the backfield is a core play of that Penn State offense. And they couldn't even get that to go on third down. So you knew that Penn State, even with them having a sold-out crowd of more than 111,000 people at this whiteout in Beaver Stadium, they were feeling the pressure. And it would get even more interesting for them because to open up the fourth quarter, this Hill character was just running all over them. He's one of their other running backs, and he hadn't necessarily gotten a lot of contributions like that when you're factoring in the other running backs that they have, the Whittingtons and the Lemars of the world. But he would get them down the field by himself. And DeCorian Moore would yet again make another play, getting open for a 29-yard gain to get them inside Penn State's red zone once more. Dan Lanning is yet another coach, like Kenny Dillingham, who is going to be aggressive at any moment where he sees fit. And so when they got in 4th and 1 on Penn State's 8-yard line, you knew what they were going to do. At that point, they had already attempted, I think, the same amount of the most 4th down attempts they've ever had in a single game up to that point. And by the end of the match here, that would be broken. But I didn't expect anything less coming from this team. And it would pay off immediately for Dan Lanning as he would get a touchdown off of it with Davison rushing for 8 yards to give them a 17-3 lead. Penn State, over the course of the rest of the fourth quarter, knew that they had to have it. They had to. There was no way they could afford to settle for anything less than touchdowns at this point of time. And they played with that urgency. I mean, Katron Allen getting a 19-yard run and Pena getting a 12-yard gain before Drew Allar, honestly, had one of his better throws of the night. No lie. Watched it live. Uncorked a fucking dime over to the right side of the end zone with Ross completely burning his men, though they're still somewhat on him a little bit. They're in no position to do anything because it was thrown that perfectly, though. Dropped right in the breadbasket for a 35-yard touchdown pass to bring the lead down to 7. And then although they allowed a first down on the next drive, they would force the punt. So, hey, Penn State had a chance to respond completely, and they would. It was all about ball control here because you didn't want to ensure that Oregon could have enough time to do anything if they were to get the ball back at any point. And Drew Allar would manage to break loose on a couple occasions, break contain, and pick up vital gains on the ground, including a 20-yarder to get 3rd and 9 converted. It would come down to 4th and 1 after Nick Singleton was briefly stopped, but they would be remiss to not rely on a man who, alongside Kaytron Allen, accounted for one of the highest totals in terms of rushing yards last season in the nation. 2 yards is easy for him, and he would do just that. They would get behind schedule yet again, but once more, Drew Allar saved their game. Keep that in mind. He would manage to get another touchdown pass to Ross. It's kind of a sweep. You know, they had Nick Singleton get out in motion, and then they had another blocker go in motion before they gave Ross an end around. And by that point, everybody was crashing over to the right side of the field. No one was really out there who was fast enough to catch Ross immediately. And he just walked right in there for the easy score to tie up the ball game. Again, solid drops from Drew Allar, to say the least. And it would get even better for Penn State because even though 30 seconds were left, you know, Oregon couldn't do much of anything. They had no choice but to get out of bounds to conserve plays because they had no timeouts left. And when it got down to 4th and 7 with about 4 seconds left in the game, they just decided to throw it away because that was literally going to be a nothing drive. And you also don't want to risk a potential punt return. It has happened. It has definitely happened. We've seen it. I wouldn't even make sense for me to bring up that damn team up north, but again, they would know about game-losing punt return touchdowns. I mean, Jalen Watts Jackson did it about a decade ago. All because the man did not punt the ball in the manner in which he was supposed to. You would not want a repeat of that situation almost a decade later. So you had to do what you had to do. Fine. Penn State would respond immediately with Pena, one of the transfer wide receivers that they picked up. And that's kind of the situation for a lot of their wide receivers. I mean, Kyron Hudson is a part of this team, also came from USC, in the offseason. He would get a 16-yard run, and then Kaytron Allen just bowled straight ahead for a 4-yard touchdown. Nothing too crazy for them to get the lead on the first possession in overtime. Almost got very chaotic for Oregon, though. They would pick up a first down, but you also had Dante Moore lose possession on multiple occasions. It could have gotten very drastic. Like, for example, he just hesitated completely. I think he was trying to keep the ball or something. There was a miscommunication on the exchange, and he just drops the ball on the ground. Luckily for him, he recovered it. They got into 4th and manageable afterwards. And even if it is 4th down, you know, with them scoring on the first drive, you don't have a choice but to go for it. But Moore would uncork a pretty good play after they picked it up. He just ran it straight ahead on a draw, put it on his shoulders, and he got it for him. Also had a little bit of trickery going. Like, this damn pass to Johnson for the 2-yard touchdown to tie the game was insane. There was so much action going on to where the pass was damn near deflected, and it could have even been a fumble in some cases because of how close the lineman was to touching him as he was reining in the football. But Moore stepped back, essentially. I suppose it was supposed to be a little bit of an RPO play, maybe. And he just pitched it forward to Johnson. It took him a little while to gather control of it, but by the time he got it, he had the lane to run straight into the end zone. Now, with that happening, you had second overtime in this game. Craziness. But hey, against two of the, top 10 teams in the nation, duking it out like this, you would really love to see something like this go down. I mean, hell, Oregon, understanding what was at stake here, wasted no time. Now, they had Dennis Sutton. I guess they mentioned that he is their best pass rusher on the team, and he's definitely one of the top picks in the NFL draft. If he is eligible, I'm definitely sure of that. Dante Moore was actually being pressured by him, and he managed to elude him completely. Now, that rarely happens, and when that does happen, good things are in store for your team. And Dante Moore would certainly make that happen, because as he gets outside of the pocket, he found an open Bryant, and he was able to just catch it and run it for the immediate touchdown on the very first play of second overtime for them. Now, Dennis Sutton would get out in space and intercept the two-point conversion. He damn near scored, too, if not for them completely catching up to him at midfield. But that just made the stakes even higher for this Oregon defense. And that gave Penn State a great chance to go out and just game this completely. Because let's be honest, in second overtime, you don't have a choice but to go for two here. And, I mean, granted, I thought, honestly, that after the first touchdown, Oregon was going to try to do something akin to what Wake Forest did. You know, I was not really going to address a lot of the other action. But, to keep it short, Wake Forest was in a spot where they had a chance to beat Georgia Tech. They had the lead, they tied the game up, and they were in overtime with a chance to take it into double overtime after they scored to make it 30-29. I guess they felt as though with the way that Georgia Tech was playing and the fact that they had the chance to pull off a major upset, they decided to go for it in first overtime. And Ashford would have a decent chance to make something happen, but it wasn't a good enough play, and the defense was able to intercept that. Georgia Tech ended up winning the game, keeping their undefeated season alive, and giving them one of their best starts to a season in quite some time. Oregon had a chance to do the same thing. I guess wisely they chose not to, and now it all came down to this for them. You needed to ensure that Penn State would not get a touchdown here to keep yourself in the greatest possibility to win this ball game. Just don't allow them to score. Because to try to top a two-point conversion, especially considering that if this would have gone to a third overtime, we're just going to have back-and-forth possessions with teams attempting two-point conversion after two-point conversion after two-point conversion. That would set the tone right there and could have potentially ended off the game if you allowed them to pick it up. So to prevent all of that anxiety, man, just make the stop. And Drew Allar, with a chance to end off the game, despite him playing relatively well down the stretch of the fourth quarter and in the first overtime period, which show his true colors and did what he always does in big moments. Crumbled completely. You know, he was trying to pass it to the tight end in Reynolds. I guess this was a little bit of a wheel route. And the pass was a bit low to the point where Thieneman, a transfer from Purdue they mentioned, boy, he made the right fucking decision to get out of there, by the way. This man jumps up and fucking works the pass within just one play of the second overtime period for Penn State. And just like that, Oregon came away with a 30-24 win in Happy Valley in a sold-out crowd for this damn whiteout. Like, all of those fans, too, have your back in that moment. They're trying to make sure, because, again, they also mentioned that, you know, you're flipping sides and that this all took place in the student section. Yet still, well, away from it. But nevertheless, all 111,000 of those guys in there are cheering you on to see you go out and win this game for them. To see you finally rise up in a big moment and come out on top. And yet, once more, he shrunk. Again, once more, you have James Franklin going out and just selling another winnable game against an AP top 10 team. His record in AP top 10 Big Ten matchups is insane. Bad. Terrible. And you can add Oregon to the mix here. I mean, you did lose to them in the Big Ten championship game last year. But whether it's Oregon over the past couple seasons, technically, and then again, obviously, Michigan and Ohio State, schools like that, this guy cannot get the fucking job done. Yet this man on College Game Day had the nerve to say you're going to see the greatest Penn State team of all time out there or some shit like that. What the fuck are you talking about? They fought hard, don't get me wrong. But you work yourself back into the game. Do all of that shit just to get picked the fuck off and give your fans an anticlimactic ending to the game. You don't even get a chance to go for two and potentially game it that way. You don't even pick up another first down on the drive. You just flat out turn the ball over, and that was that. That is fucking tough, to say the least. I mean, oh my gosh, man. Like, wow, bro. Back at this shit again. You can't make it up. But again, strong win for Oregon as well, and naturally they shot up. In the AP top 25, I think they're the number 2 team in the nation right now. And I think Miami slid down to 3rd. Penn State, again, even with them losing in that fashion, they only dropped down to 7. Again, this is a top 10 team in Oregon. They're considered one of the best in the nation. So, like, naturally, there wasn't going to be that much of a drop-off, right? Dante Moore definitely had a hell of a game, you know. Even though I'm coming out and saying early on he might not have been ready for the moment when it called. I mean, hell, he was ready. He pulled out some spectacular plays in key moments that extended their chances here and truly put them in the best possible position to win. He completed 74.4% of his passes in a hostile environment and 248 yards with 3 touchdown passes to go along with 35 yards on the ground, while not turning the ball over a single time. Hill Jr., their running back, had 82 rushing yards on 10 carries on the ground, and the team as a whole had 176 rushing yards with a touchdown. As for their receivers, Decorium Moore, yet another good game for him. He is leading the Big Ten amongst freshmen wide receivers in receiving yards, and he would keep that up here with 89 receiving yards on 7 catches. Bryant Jr. also had 55 receiving yards on 6 catches and a touchdown. And Kenyon Sadiq had 49 yards and 6 catches as well. Although, I think like in the 4th quarter of the game, he went down with injury. I think that final drive from Oregon in the 4th quarter, he was sidelined. I guess this was something lower body. I hope that it's nothing significant. He's definitely one of their better players, generally speaking. So you want to make sure that he's around. As for Penn State, again, numbers don't do it justice. Because like I said, Allar played exceptionally well down the stretch of the 4th quarter in overtime. And maybe there was a little bit of desperation there, but he absolutely had to have it. His back was against the wall, and although I will definitely not shy away from calling him trash, because he's definitely proven to be, for that pocket of time, he played exceptionally well. But then you get into the interception, and then you could fall victim to looking at the overall numbers, and you'll think that he played completely inferior, which, again, in every sense of the imagination, he did. He was outplayed by Dante Moore in this case. That's not a stretch to say that. But again, on paper, 14 of 25 passing, 56% completion, and 137 yards with 2 touchdown passes and an interception doesn't even look comparable. And again, if you're Allar at this point, that by the standards that everyone seems to set out for him, by saying that he is either the best behind Cade Klubnik or the second best prospect in this upcoming NFL draft, by those standards, right, he'd be falling way short of expectations. And again, the fact that this is happening repeatedly is not a good thing right now. Like every single fucking time. Every single time. Without fail. That is a fundamental issue with the program in and of themselves. And that does fall back inevitably on James Franklin, even if the players have to go out there and execute. Because something's got to fucking give, man. I mean, you have that valiant effort at the end of the regulation, in the first overtime, and you still can't close the deal. You still can't. Like, what the hell is it going to take from you at this point? If you are constantly in a spot where you can never get the fucking job done. Never. I mean, come on, man. 139 rushing yards for the team, although you can say that Singleton and Allen combined might have had one of their worst efforts as a duo, even though Allen got a rushing touchdown. As for their receivers, not much to speak of outside of Ross, who would get 4 receptions for 48 yards and 2 touchdowns by himself, including, obviously, the 2 in that fourth quarter. Again, this is not a trend that you would like to see from Penn State consistently, especially if you've been a long-time fan of them. Like, it's got to take something, man. But, hey, I guess that's what y'all get for consistently putting your trust in James Franklin. And obviously, the jury is still out on Drew Allar at this point. But, hey, man, what are you going to do? As for Oregon, again, they extend to 5-0, a 5-game winning streak as well to open up the season. And, hey, they could be in cruise control. I mean, obviously, Penn State was going to be a tough matchup in the same way that it was in the conference championship game for them last year. Indiana and Iowa should play them tough. I guess that is their game, Indiana, in the next couple of weeks. They would probably win that game. Even though Indiana themselves are also 5-0 after getting by Iowa barely with a 49-yard touchdown pass from Mendoza V to Surratt. It was one of his rougher games overall, but hey, he still broke through. It was to be expected. Iowa's defense is always going to do that, even if they gave up 31 points to Rutgers the week before. And Indiana's offense was naturally going to cool down. Like, 63 points is just tough, okay, to give up. But Illinois' defense doesn't even compare to what Iowa consistently puts out on an annual basis. That's why Kirk Ferentz is considered one of the better defensive head coaches out there and just a terror to play against. But that'll do it for all the game action that I'll actually end up covering. In other news, earlier in the week, man, a fucking bombshell, a literal bombshell would break. I guess it might not be all that surprising, but for someone who is as much, has as much connection and is as synonymous with one program as this man right here, it's crazy to see that they let him go. But with the way that it had been looking, I suppose that it might have been time. Oklahoma State earlier last week would fire longtime head coach Mike Gundy. And when I saw that shit come through, I was like, damn, oh my goodness, they actually fucking did this. Wow. Now again, Oklahoma State for so long under Gundy had been a staple. You know, as this quote says right here, as it alludes to essentially, had a 170-90 record with them. He had 8 seasons with more than 10 wins, 2 conference title wins in 2021 and 2023, I believe. Like, he's been a thorn in the side of damn near every legendary Big 12 team from at least the mid-2000s to the late 2010s that you can even think of. But it has just been a downhill slide for them within the past couple of seasons. Like, they did mention that he went 3-0 to start out last year, and it's like, okay, that's cool. But dating back to the end of that streak, he's lost 11 of his last 12 games there, and they just haven't even looked competitive in some of these, man. They got their asses kicked against Oregon 69-3 after Gundy called out Dan Lanning and the Oregon program for, I guess, investing as much money as they consistently do in their players. And honestly, even though, you know, as kind of the old guard, right, Mike Gundy isn't really going to be that willing to adjust to the NIL era all that well. One could imagine that. But the disparity in talent between these two teams right now showed itself when you lose a game by 66 points. So even though you want to build traditionally, I get that. You know, there are a lot of pros that come with that and that came with that. But it's kind of impossible to just completely ignore NIL and, you know, investing money in players as an additional way to recruit talent in this era. It's impossible. And, you know, if you're not willing to do that, you're going to have a rough time succeeding in this new era of college football. I mean, ironically enough, for all the stuff that Dabo Swinney can get, he's in the same boat himself. Even though he's been more successful in terms of championship wins than Mike Gundy has been. But he's kind of in that same boat right now. They haven't fired him yet, but he's been daring them to, I guess. I don't really understand that. But hey, what are you gonna do? Okay. Yeah, no, it's just strange, man. It's like when I tell you that he spent damn near his entire life, his DNA is essentially ingrained in that program. As this quote states right here, in all, Gundy spent well over 30 years at Oklahoma State as a player, assistant coach, and head coach. As a player, he was an undersized gunslinger who balanced the Cowboys' offense when it featured star running backs Thurman Thomas and Barry Sanders. He ended his career as the Big Eight's all-time winning passer, then had several assistant coaching roles at the school before reviving the program as head coach. End quote. Just think about how crazy that is. In fact, I saw a different video talking about the matter, and I think the amount of time that he spent at Oklahoma State as a student, player, assistant coach, and head coach totaled 35 fucking years. Okay? The man is 58 years old. And he was also born in Oklahoma City. If there is any one person who bleeds orange and black in that damn area, it is Mike Gundy himself. And he's proven that time and again through his coaching tenure. We all know about the different rants and stuff that he's had over the course of this time. But for him to literally progress all the way from being alongside Thurman Thomas and Barry Sanders in that era in the late 1980s to move along to the I'm a man, I'm 40 era in the mid-2000s, and then get all the way to their tear in the 2010s between all of these interesting players like Spencer Sanders, for example, getting into contention with him as a quarterback. And then obviously having a bit of a forgettable time with Alan Bowman leading the way, but having Ollie Gordon II as a workhorse running back to rely on in this time. Multiple eras, multiple different facets highlighting Oklahoma State Cowboys football over the course of this time, and he's been there for it all. Every single bit of it. And just like that, he's gone. It hurts. It probably still hurts right now. I mean, damn. Like, literally, I shit you not. I mean, bro. Like, as they state right here, as other articles kind of allude to, Mike Gundy was literally trying to do this for more time. Even with the struggles, he was still trying to go through with this. But, again, higher authorities in that front office, in that athletic administration, I guess, just said, nah, the time has come, man. It's like we can't keep doing this. We are so far behind the 8 ball, and we need to catch the hell back up. It sucks that we have to part ways with a person of that magnitude for the team. But in their perspective, it might have been now or never. This is going to be a long road back to glory for Oklahoma State football, even without Gundy. They have Todd Meacham, 60-year-old, who also played for Oklahoma State as a lineman in the mid-1980s, taking over as the interim head coach, and they also lost to Baylor on Saturday as well, 45-27, with him also firing the defensive coordinator. So a lot of changes going on at Oklahoma State right now. But obviously, Gundy is the biggest fish. And again, honestly, if things went a certain way, maybe Mike Gundy would still be there. However, his last loss, which again is going to forever be ingratiated as a part of his legacy with the school for as great as it was, this man lost to Tulsa, I guess the Friday night before this. For the first time, the school lost to the Tulsa Golden Flashes, all right, since 1951. It was the very first time that happened in fucking 74 years. And the AD said as much. They were expecting to beat the hell out of Tulsa. They weren't expecting that game to be a situation where Oklahoma State had to fucking fight back from being down against this team, and they still couldn't pull it up. But that's the way the cookie crumbled, and as a result of that, along with all the lack of success over these past couple seasons, he's gone. You know, it felt like something like this could have happened much earlier as well. But hey, again, like he stated, as this quote states right here, this is not something that I thought we would be doing on this Tuesday. I expected to beat the University of Tulsa and the results to be different. End quote. They couldn't do it, and so from there, they were just left with making a tough decision. I think people were also thinking that, hey, Mike Gundy may as well, spend the rest of the season as the coach and then get canned, right? He also accrued a $15 million buyout as a result of this. That's a massive amount of money for a coach who has not had a lot of, again, recent success. It's a what have you done for me lately type of league here. And Oklahoma State hasn't even been that relevant of a team. And if they have been, it's been for all the wrong reasons. This is how fucking terrible and atrocious the offense was under Alan Bowman. In his quote-unquote leadership. And then with the way that defense had just been getting filleted in some of these games. Remember the damn Colorado game to cap off or nearly cap off last season for them. Shellacked completely by Travis Hunter in that Colorado offense. And then to go out like that against Oregon. man, it is just tough. And, people might also think that Mike Gundy, for as successful as he has been with the program across the whole of his tenure there were opportunities where Oklahoma State had chances, great chances, to fire him. Great chances to fire him. I mean, as this entire quote states right here, okay, in 2020, he apologized for calling COVID-19 the quote-unquote Chinese virus, and again months later after he wore a t-shirt featuring the far-right One American News Network that created a disagreement with running back Chuba Hubbard. All those things were forgiven as the team won. But the Cowboys lost their last 9 games last season, the final defeat of 52-0 blah at Colorado, end quote. Yeah, as I just mentioned, like that's shellacking a shutout against a Buffalo's team that still has yet to prove that they can consistently bring this same energy against elite competition in the Big 12 and college football in general. But that's neither here nor there. That is inexcusable stuff. As crazy as it gets sometimes, like that quote, honestly, I wouldn't take that as crapping on Mike Gundy at all or trying to cast him down and just kick him while he's already down at this point. Because it could be viewed like that if you're kind of bringing this up right now. I can understand that. But I think that just goes to show that, like, people who have been nearly, if not more successful, have been fired or removed from their posts for much less. When you are in Mike Gundy's position, being a hometown kid as it is and being such a staple of that program for that many years at that point, obviously you're going to want to make sure that these actions are not things that he repeatedly does ever again. And I think I do remember the situation with Chuba Hubbard, because yeah, those guys were definitely, I think it was public too. They were certainly getting into it. So that was not a great time for Mike Gundy right there. But even with all of that being said, he was able to overcome it because of the prestige that he held as a coach. And yet again, with this constant loss, with the below average rankings in like recruiting class, with him not even trying to be active at all in the NIL or money scene at all. Like, he completely denied it. As he said right here, I told the players, there's no negotiating now. Portal's over, all negotiations history. Now we're playing football, just coaching and playing football. The business side of what we do now is we have to have those conversations with them, he said. Tell your agent to start, quit calling us and asking for more money. It's non-negotiable now. Start again in December. Just completely casting it to the wayside like that, without recognizing the true scale it has had on college football in just the past 5 years alone was a grave mistake, and it hurt Mike Gundy's remainder of the tenure with the team. So now again, even though he has those highs amongst some of his years as a coach here, it ends on a very sour note. Yeah, it's crushing on both sides. I mean, literally, like I said, it's going to be a long and tough rebuild for Oklahoma State. And yeah, Meacham is going to be the temporary guy. But honestly, where the hell do you even start? Where do you even start if you're them? Because it's like, sure, if you get a good enough class of recruits transfers and I guess, have a solid kind of NIL distribution here, you could get back on the right track. But again, that's still going to be such a long road back to elite play. It's like, I don't know. And then again, from Mike Gundy, man, 35 years of his fucking life spent as a member in some capacity of the university. And essentially, an Oklahoma kid growing into a teen there, going into a young man there, and then eventually a full-blown middle-aged adult by the time he's removed from his post from Stillwater. Right? He was legitimately expecting to be there for a lifetime. And I get that you can't necessarily have it both ways if you were never at all willing to adjust to the new landscape of college football. But at the same time, what does he even do now? What does he do? If this is what he was looking forward to doing, and that opportunity has been taken away from him now completely, with very little chance of him getting it back. Because it's like, if you're Oklahoma State at this point, you already bought him out. Why would you even think about trying to bring him back? It would be fun, but you've legitimately made your choice. And you have to move forward now. That's what you've done for yourself. But I don't know where the road leads for Mike Gundy, man. It is, it's insane. Truly. To all these days later, understand that he is no longer going to be the head coach of that football team. It's absolutely wild stuff. But hey, even with all that being said, and even with the stuff that they outlined in that article, which again, take that with a grain of salt. Don't view that as kind of insulting and shitting on Mike Gundy's career, right? They've got to outline those points in there. And honestly, I heard of a couple of those things, those controversies, minor as they may have been, in Mike Gundy's career before. I understand that. It can look away. That wasn't the intent there. You know what I'm saying? Even with all that being the case, forever gonna be a legend in that area across all of college football. And even with him not having a national title to his name, I think that he could be a college football Hall of Famer as a coach, contributor, per se. He's got a very good shot at getting in there. That would be the ultimate sign of respect. Even if it didn't end amicably with Oklahoma State, bro, he should get in. I don't know if they do the balloting thing, but, technically, I guess, if there is a 5-year wait time, I guess sometime between now and 2030, he'd be getting a call. And on the very first ring, they just gonna tell him up front. They're not even gonna say, oh, he might be, I guess they'll give him some context, tell him that he's a finalist for a specific year. But whichever year he is named a finalist in, he's getting in. Immediately. No question. And in other news for different Oklahoma team, in Norman, John Mateer, after the game against Auburn last week, would be ruled out for at least the next 4 games, so about a month or so. He needed surgery on his hand. Now, that is certainly tough. Hindered his Heisman case. Immediately, Fernando Mendoza V shot up Heisman odds boards, which makes sense given the game that he had last week, right? But it could get tough for Oklahoma. At the very least right now, 1 week has passed. They had a bye, so John Mateer can still take the time that he needs to get right. They get back to action next, this upcoming Saturday against Kent State. That's going to be a tune-up game. They will certainly whip their ass. But then you get one against Texas. And it just gets tougher and tougher from there. Like, even if they do come out with wins there, they are going to be much harder to traverse through without the experience that John Mateer provides. Certainly. And I don't know if their backup guy is going to be able to fill the same role. But again, Oklahoma, in a way, kind of had to see this coming. Again, when you are consistently utilizing him like that in the rushing game, wear and tear is going to start to chip away at him, I'm sure. And it didn't help that you were not getting enough contributions from your running backs at all in this time. I'd hope that as they continue to work Mateer back into getting healthy, they can actually establish that so that you don't have a situation like this again. At the very least, they still have a solid chance of making the CFP. You know, they've given themselves a good enough cushion. You can tune it up against Kent State next week, and then you get into the grit of the action. But by that point, it would be that Texas game and then another SEC match, and then just like that, in theory, Mateer should be back, if not very close to 100%. Worst case scenario is that you manage to drop both of those games, though, against SEC competition, which would not be optimal. Let's be honest, they're going to beat Kent State. That there's nothing for them to worry about there. But winning at least one of those SEC games is optimal. If they can win both, even better. John Mateer comes back in and does what he's been doing without any need to worry about much, about having to play on a margin. Because by that point, they'd still be undefeated. You're getting deeper and deeper into the season, and you're solidifying your case for the CFP with solid wins against ranked teams. If they win both. So we'll see what happens. But that'll do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.